Let's start our first call. Let's go with Phillip in California, who has an anti-natalist call and is wondering if that's the most compassionate option. And I think that's an interesting conversation to have. It's uncomfortable. So let's do it. Phillip in California, you're live with Eric and V.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Wow. Okay. Let's see what we can do. So do you want to give your point and we'll try and address it?
I just wanted to ask if it's really ethical to knowingly or intentionally have children.
To intentionally have children. I would say that it is less ethical to unintentionally have children, because at least you need to think about it and know that you're prepared to deal with that. But honestly, you're talking to somebody who also philosophically at least is anti-natalist. So I agree with the idea that if consent is the most important thing, which I think it is, you cannot consent to being forced to exist. So if we were to take consent to its logical extreme, anti-natalism would be a consistent worldview to have. I'm curious what Eric thinks about this, because I know I've talked about it a lot, and I'm super interested in the dialogue that you guys are going to have.
Well, I've vacillated back and forth over how I felt about it, because there sometimes I would take a strong point on, whether or not you're getting a net good or a net bad in living a life versus never having lived it at all. And depending on where I've stood at certain times, I've thought to myself, okay, well, what is the logical extension to that? How would I need to be logically consistent? And I'd come up across anti-natalism that just doesn't feel right. But what do you think, Phillip?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with it. But the question I get asked when I talk to people about it is, that's a stupid idea, because then the whole human race would just come to a screeching stop. And then I ask them, is that necessarily a bad thing?
Right.
That who are we to think we're so important that we need to keep our race alive or something, if it means subjecting non-consenting entities to eventual death.
Fair enough. I don't know. I'm not there. I think that if somebody wants to have a child, I would not view that action as immoral, as much as I would want to judge, whether or not that person has thought about what's going to happen afterward. If somebody, like V said, unplanned, decided they were going to bring a life into the world that they weren't ready for, that they wouldn't be able to care for that child, then I think that would be, immoral. But I think that if you have the love to give, and if you have the, if you have the want to live that life, just do it well, and I don't know, man, because every time I really consider it, I think to myself, well, no, actually I have stronger opinions. There is a lot of suffering out there, but I just can't get over the hump. And I feel like there is this spot that you need to move over, where you would say this is moral or immoral. And I'm just not yet at the having children being immoral part.
Yeah. And I also realize how I sound. So,
well, I mean,
I don't necessarily judge people for having children. I'm just thinking about the whole consent angle.
Well, I mean, if we are going to be consistent, there are very many people who do judge and have moral opinions about people who don't have children, right? There are very large communities that say if you are not having children, then you are wrong morally, and I'm going to judge you for it. So the idea that it's out of the realm of capacity to judge people for having children, I don't think we should be judging anybody for doing what they want to do. But I don't think that it's unrealistic to be like, hey, there is one side of this scale that is very culturally acceptable to judge people for not having kids.
Mm-hmm.
So like on the other side of that, if I were to judge people for having kids, why is that automatically worse?
I think I got a distinction that popped in there as you were talking about it. The distinction there would be the act of having a child
Mm-hmm.
and the choice to have a child. Like, we could view those separately, couldn't we? Is the act of having a child in and of itself a moral or immoral action? Or
that's the same-sex attraction argument. You can be gay, just don't act on it.
No, because I'm not saying that, like, I don't know. I guess one involves the motivation of the person having the kid, and the other involves kind of stepping away and looking at the action of giving birth itself. Is that immoral? I don't know.
The action of giving birth?
Yeah, because then you're bringing a life into the world, right? Having a kid. But I don't know. I think I need to think about that. Yeah, I'm going to need to think about that. But I'm sorry that probably doesn't sound super carved in stone. But I want to be honest. I don't want to take a position that I'm not comfortable with.
Well, I don't think that every...
Yeah, no, that's understandable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's a... I respect your desire to, like, not have a firm answer on that. But also, like, I think it's understandable that talking about non-existence is... feels uncomfortable, feels wrong in some, like, deep sense, because that's not something we are programmed to accept or be okay with. Like, our entire drive is to survive. And so the idea of not surviving intentionally, in the same way that, like, Death with Dignity gets so many people's hackles up, I think it's a very similar gut emotion to be like, not having kids, like, there's something wrong there, like, more on a deeper level than just, like, philosophically or morally. Like, that's biological instinct. And so while I totally get that, I would encourage you to go past that if you can and see, like, is there a really good reason why I'm feeling that way? Or is that something that is, like, ingrained in me and kind of a response, like a knee-jerk response to that concept?
I don't think so, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I view non-existence as amoral. I don't think you can put a moral distinction on non-existence. It's just, it doesn't fit. It's a category error. And so I don't think that's necessarily it. But yeah, no, I'm going to need to stew on it a little bit. I don't think it's also biological either, though. I don't think it's biologically burnt into you to want to have kids. I think it's biologically burnt into you to want to bone. But those are different things.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying everybody wants kids. I'm saying that there is a part of you that, in the same way that getting your mind around the idea of, death with dignity took me a minute, because there was just something that didn't make sense to me on that, like, gut level.
Yeah. It
feels like a very similar thing where, on a gut level, I totally empathize with people who are like, anti-natalism, that's horrible. Like, that's not right. And following that train of thought, being like, okay, well, why do I think it's not right if it is logically consistent with my values? There's a juxtaposition there between what feels correct and what logically is correct based on my worldview. It's interesting. It's an interesting place to be.
It is. And I don't know. The one other part of it that I can think of that I would bring up is the idea of, if you have the ability to consider whether or not, really consider, will I be able to give a new life a shot at life that has as little suffering as possible, right? If you're that concerned about it, maybe you should be the one having kids instead of the person who thinks that they're, stalking soldiers in God's army,
I mean, fair.
Like if I would prefer that than a quiverful type, family, 20
And
kids.
yet quiverful type families are so much more culturally and socially acceptable still, even outside of that niche.
Yeah, true. And that is very true.
Yeah. I'm one of 6 kids. Wow. Oh my goodness. Your mom must have been a superhero. That's so cool. How close are you with all of your siblings? How many kids do you want?
Right.
Versus, oh, we have a cat and we're not planning on having kids. In fact, I want my uterus out of my body. Gasp. Silence. Awkwardness.
Right.
Oh my God. Right? So like it still does have a very cultural foundation outside of a particular religion.
Fair enough. Enough.
What I've heard a lot is I ask why do you want to have kids? Because I want to have that parenting experience. I want to give life to something that's mine and has my blood and all this stuff. And I'm just like, but why is that important? Like, why couldn't you just adopt a baby that's already born?
Yeah.
I mean,
you'd be giving a loving home to something that, really needs it.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head where I'm at there. Yeah, I think it's vain. And I think that it is selfish if you have the opportunity to do that just because you want to see your lineage. Like it doesn't, I don't know. No, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. If you can give me a really good reason why you want to have, and again, this is a hypothetical person. I'm never going to go up to a random person and be like, give me a really good reason you want to have a kid. Like, do what you want. But in this hypothetical scenario where we're trying to be logically consistent, give me a situation in which you would want to have a biological child that does not stem from selfishness of some kind. And I'm not saying necessarily that selfishness is wrong, but I have not heard an example of a motive to have a child that is not selfish.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I think that unless you can absolutely 100% guarantee that you will provide a fulfilled and happy life for this child, then I think that it's not, that's just not attainable.
That's fair. I mean, that's not mutually exclusive with adoption. So there's room for that. Yeah, I just saw in the live chat, RPG Grenade says most of the anti-natalistic arguments tend towards an extreme end of minimization of suffering, which isn't where my moral framework lies. And I think about that and I realize, I'll squish bugs. Those are alive. Yeah. I'm still a carnivore. That's definitely taking life. So maybe I'm just, I don't think I could be convinced from one of those arguments.
Yeah. I mean, the big antinatalist arguments you hear a lot are based on the reduction of suffering specifically, not even harm, just like suffering. Like, hey, you know what? If you were never born, you'd never have to deal with constipation. And because you have to deal with constipation, now that's a net loss for this. Then you would have to do some like cosmic calculus to figure out exactly how many bad things versus good things versus neutral things happen to you on a daily basis.
And should we treat flourishing and suffering as a zero-sum game? Is that
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You would have to do some really weird math to get there. And I've done the math and it checks out if you want to go down that direction.
I've done the math and it checks out.
I've done that math. I gave that presentation at a philosophy club back in Ohio.
Did you?
Yeah, it was interesting. But the point here is that that's not where I come into it with, and I also don't expect everybody else to also get there with me. Based on my personal values.
Yeah.
If I were to be 100% logically consistent, which often just gets you to absurdity, being a skeptic in the philosophical sense 100% of the time also gets you to absurdity. Then yes, that logical end would be antinatalism. And I can say that without actively condemning people who disagree with me or who want to have kids for reasons I personally might not want to, just as long as you're taking care of the little fuckers, fine. Just be good parents, be good people, and then we have no problem. It then becomes a conversation of, okay, now that there is a being in this world, consensually or not, now we must reduce harm, right? Now is the point where we need to think about you are going to exist now and you are going to impact other people through your existence. How am I going to deal with this in a way that allows you to flourish and the people you come into contact with flourish as well?
Absolutely.
So,
Phillip, this has been an interesting icebreaker into the episode. I'm glad you called, though. It's fun to kind of stretch in that direction because it's not somewhere that I often find myself, and so it's nice to consider those things, get a more well-rounded philosophical view of different things. Appreciate you calling.
Sweet. Yeah, no, I called last week too, and then that was a great call.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you.
Happy to talk to you again.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right, so I am seeing a lot of stuff in the chat about furries not being sexual necessarily.
Yeah, we even have a theist furry on the line.
Oh, we do, but it's Mildred, and Mildred has been many things to us at many points. I'm happy to talk to Mildred, but also like it's Mildred. All that to say, I am 100% willing to be wrong on this, and I do know that other communities have been overly sexualized in a harmful way. So if that is something I have done, I do apologize. There are absolutely communities of furries that have nothing to do with that.
Well,
100%. I'm just, the concern for me is where you are drawing a line between biblical adherence in a sense where you are actively discriminating with others.
Well, let's have this conversation with that other person here. That way we can...
Mildred isn't a Christian, though. So...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
so
right. The theist.
Right.
Got it.
I do want to just get through this real fast because I'm willing to admit when I fucked up. The problem I have with this has nothing to do with the sexual component at all. Its presence, its absence, I really don't care. You do you, as long as it's consensual and you're not harming people. The concern I have is when you are of a group that actively discriminates against people because they are quote unquote unbiblical, then organizing your life and your identity around something that is not biblical, and where the fuck that line is drawn for you and why you aren't then extending the same understanding and acceptance of non-biblical existence to other people. That's my whole point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.